You graduate and discover that the degree does not guarantee employment. You send your CV to companies that never respond. You apply for internship that require experience you cannot have because you have never been given an opportunity to work. You apply for entry-level positions that demands years of experience. You sit at home with qualifications that you cannot use while your parents ask you, when are you going to find work? As if unemployment is a personal failure rather than a structural crisis. You watch people with political connections receiving opportunities while you remain unemployed. You watch tenders being awarded to the connected while your own small businesses struggle to survive. You watch billions disappear through corruption while you are told that there is no money for education, no money for accommodation, no money for youth development, and no money for employment. There is a young person in this country who has stopped applying for jobs because rejection has become so routine that they no longer expect a positive response. There is a young person who no longer believes that their qualification will change their life because they've watched graduates remain unemployed for years. There is a young person who has abandoned university because the financial barriers became too big. There is a young person who has completed a degree but cannot graduate because of debt. There's a young person who's trapped in a cycle of temporary work, casual labor, and unemployment. When you begin to believe that nothing will change, it is a political crisis because when hope is systematically destroyed, you do not simply become unemployed. You become alienated from society. You begin to withdraw from politics. You begin to believe that elections are meaningless, that politicians are all the same, that participation cannot change your circumstances. Some of you surrender to alcohol. Some surrender to drugs. Some surrender to crime. Some surrender to depression and isolation. Some leave the country because you no longer believe that South Africa is a future for you. And others remain here but are psychologically defeated. We must not condemn you without first asking what society has done to you. You have been told that your time will come. But for millions of young people, every year that passes is another year of unemployment, another year of debt, another year of dependence, and another year in which potential is wasted. This is why we must understand your age. The youth of black consciousness were also told that they were powerless. They were told that apartheid was too strong, that the state was too powerful, that resistance will lead only to punishment. But they rejected the idea that fear should determine the limits of their potential imagination. The youth of 1976 were also confronted by a system that appeared invisible. They knew that the police had guns, that the state had prisons, and that consequences of resistance could be deadly. But they reached a point at which the humiliation of remaining silent became greater than the fear of resistance. The youth of Fees Must Fall reached that point and occupied campuses and said that education cannot be treated as a luxury. They said that a democratic society cannot continue to exclude the children of the poor from institutions that are supposed to serve the public. You must learn from this generation, from black consciousness. You must learn that the first victory of the oppressor is to convince the oppressed that they are powerless. From 1976, you must learn that fear cannot be allowed to determine the limits of resistance. And from Fees Must Fall, you must learn that even in a democracy, you must continue to organize when institutions reproduce exclusion. This is why the EFF exists. The EFF exists because we refuse to tell you that your suffering is normal, that you must simply wait for the economy to improve, that unemployment is a personal failure, or that your future must depend upon the goodness of those who already own the wealth of the country. The EFF exists to organize the anger of the people into a political force capable of taking power and transforming the institutions that shape your lives. This is why the EFF has advanced that the Data Must Fall campaign. The demand for affordable data is a demand for access to education, employment, information, and economic opportunity. When you are a student and you cannot afford data, you are denied access to academic resources. If you are unemployed and cannot afford data, you are denied access to employment opportunities. Even worse, the data comes with expiry date as if it's food. If you are trying to build a small business and cannot afford data, you are denied access to customers and markets. And when you are expected to live in a digital economy but cannot afford the basic tool that allows you to participate in that economy, you are being economically excluded. The communications companies that makes enormous profit from the people of this country, yet the young people who need data to study, to apply for jobs, and to build businesses are expected to pay some of the highest prices of access. The EFF therefore challenged Vodacom, MTN, Telkom, and more in Parliament that data must fall because digital access has become a basic requirement for participation in modern society. ICASA stood with us and directed the removal of data expiry over time. But the fight is still on to reduce the cost and make data accessible. We cannot speak about a knowledge economy, a digital economy, and the fourth industrial revolution while the children of the poor are excluded from the internet by the price of data. Additionally, we cannot speak about unemployment, hopelessness, the crisis of youth development while pretending that the aggressive commercialization of alcohol has no relationship to the condition in which our communities live. You are surrounded by alcohol advertising, targeted by an industry that spends enormous amounts of money to associate alcohol with success, celebration, masculinity, popularity, and social status, while the consequences of alcohol abuse are carried by families and communities that are already struggling with poverty and unemployment. This is why the EFF has pursued the Legal Amendment Bill. The purpose of this legislation is to restrict the advertising and marketing of alcohol beverages and to prevent the liquor industry from aggressively promoting alcohol in a society already facing enormous social challenges. We cannot allow an industry to make enormous profits by making alcohol everywhere to everyone and then leave communities to carry the consequences of addiction, violence, road death, domestic abuse, and social destruction. You cannot walk through a township without encountering heavy alcohol advertising at every corner, and every event, especially for the youth, is sponsored by an alcohol brand. Yet, you can walk through the same township and struggle to find a functioning library, a safe public recreational facility, a properly maintained sports ground, or a space where young people can develop their talent. The priorities of the systems are clear. There is money to advertise alcohol. There is money to profit from you, but there is never enough money to invest in your future. The EFF rejects this. We say that the protection of young people and communities must take priority over the profit of industries that benefit from social destruction. The Liquor Amendment Bill is therefore part of a broader struggle to create an environment in which young people can develop rather than being commercially targeted by industries that profit from despair, addiction, and vulnerability. This is also why every year we pursue the Sofunda Ngenkani campaign, because we understand that the obstacle confronting you are not individual failures. Sofunda Ngenkani is a declaration that the EFF will continue to fight for access to education and for the removal of financial obstacles that prevent children of the poor from learning and advancing themselves. The EFF has also introduced the Student Debt Relief Bill into Parliament. This bill is for the young person who has completed every academic requirement but cannot receive their qualifications because they owe the fees. Because how are you supposed to pay the debt if you cannot get the job because you do not have a certificate? This is a vicious circle designed to keep you trapped. The Student Debt Relief Bill proposed that the government clear all the debt currently owed by students in order for them to get their qualifications and begin a future. We have also had to fight against an attempt to turn universities into credit agencies and to blacklist students because they cannot pay their fees. The EFF opposed the proposed regulation that would have allowed educational institutions to provide credit information and potentially expose students to blacklisting for unpaid fees. We said that you must not be treated like criminals because you are poor, and that young people who seek an education must not be handed over to the debt collectors and credit agencies as a punishment for coming from a working class family. As it stands, the University of Pretoria has followed our lead and instituted a 3-year campaign to raise 50 million to help graduates who have completed all their academic requirements for their degrees but remain unable to access their qualifications because of outstanding historical debt. This is the power of the EFF fighting for the youth. This is the power of the EFF Youth Command fighting for themselves and you, their peers here at the University of Limpopo and across the country. One by one, these institutions will realize the shame inherent in the system that failed poor students, and one by one, through our example, they will set up campaigns like the University of Pretoria and assist students in need. Furthermore, the EFF will succeed in pushing forward the cancellation of all student debt by government because your government owes you a future. You don't owe them nothing. This is not where it ends. The EFF is also working for young people in Parliament to challenge madness of fees they need to pay to professional bodies in order to be registered and therefore employed. Accountants, health workers, engineers, architects, and many more are required to maintain membership in these bodies, and yet, for many, these fees are unreasonable and leave them further away from employment. We cannot have a simple